During a visit to his ranch, the millionaire froze when he saw the ranch girl tame the wild horse. The same one only his daughter used to ride before disappearing 18 years ago. Morning crept slowly over Silver Creek Ranch, painting the sky in gentle strokes of pink and gold. Richard Hale stood at the window of his study, watching the day break over his land with tired eyes that had seen too many sunrises alone. In his weathered hands, he held a faded photograph, a little girl with wild curls and a gap-toothed smile, sitting proudly on a white horse with distinctive black patches. 18 years, he whispered to the empty room. 18 years since his 8-year-old daughter Sophia had vanished during a morning ride. 18 years of searching, hoping, and finally, a hollow acceptance that settled in his chest like a stone. Richard traced the outline of his daughter's face with his thumb. The photograph had been handled so often that its edges were soft and worn. Behind him, the grandfather clock ticked away, marking time in a house where it had effectively stopped on that spring morning 18 years ago. A sharp knock at the door pulled Richard from his memories. "Enter," he called, tucking the photograph into his shirt pocket. Close to his heart, Victoria Hale swept into the room, impeccably dressed despite the early hour. At 55, Richard's sister maintained the elegant bearing and cold precision that had become her trademark around the ranch. Her ash-blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place. "You're up early," she remarked, her gaze sweeping critically over the whiskey glass on his desk. Again, Richard didn't bother to respond. After Sophia disappeared and his world collapsed, Victoria had moved in to help her grieving brother. What started as temporary assistance had evolved into complete control. Now, 18 years later, Silver Creek Ranch bore Victoria's stamp in everything from the modernized operations to the fear she instilled in the ranch hands. "Martinez quit this morning," Victoria said, arranging papers on his desk with sharp, efficient movements. "Said he nearly broke his neck trying to handle that damn horse of yours." Richard's jaw tightened. "Starfire isn't just any horse." "Starfire!" Victoria spat the name like it tasted bitter. "Should have been put down years ago. That's the second hand he's injured this month. That horse was Sophia's. He stays." The siblings stared at each other. A familiar standoff. Victoria's eyes, the same deep blue as Richard's but lacking their warmth, narrowed slightly. "Fine," she conceded with a tight smile. "But I've taken the liberty of contacting a horse trainer, someone who specializes in difficult cases." Richard raised an eyebrow. Victoria never backed down so easily. "Don't look so surprised." "Richard, the ranch hands are starting to talk. Either we deal with that animal properly, or he goes, 'I'm just being practical.'" Outside, the ranch was coming alive. Through the window, Richard watched ranch hands move between the buildings, their breath visible in the cool morning air. Silver Creek spread out before him. 2,000 acres of prime ranch land that had been in the Hale family for 4 generations. His father had passed it to him, and he had planned to pass it to Sophia one day. Now, he wasn't sure who would inherit the ranch. Not Victoria. If he could help it, she might run the place efficiently, but Silver Creek had a soul that his sister never understood. "When does this trainer arrive?" Richard asked, turning back to his sister. 3 days. Her references are excellent." Victoria placed a folder on his desk. "And review them if you'd like, but I've already handled everything. As always," Richard thought bitterly. He nodded, dismissing her with the gesture. Victoria hesitated as if she wanted to say more, then turned and left, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. When the door closed, Richard reached for the folder but didn't open it. Instead, he walked to the window again, his gaze drawn to the old stables in the distance. Most of the horses had been moved to the new facilities Victoria had built closer to the main house, but Starfire remained in his original stall, separated from the other animals. Richard made his way down to the stables, nodding at ranch hands who quickly looked away. He knew what they thought, that he was a broken man, living in the past, letting his sharp-tongued sister run his life and his business. Maybe they were right. The old stable was quiet, dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight that streamed through the high windows. Richard approached Starfire's stall carefully. The horse was a magnificent animal, even now in his advancing years. Pure white with distinctive black patches across his hindquarters, he had been specially bred and a gift for Sophia's 8th birthday. just months before she vanished. After her disappearance, the horse had changed. Once gentle and affectionate, Starfire had become aggressive, allowing no one but Richard near him, and even then, the animal would not be ridden. It was as if he, too, waited for the return of the little girl who had loved him. "Hey, old friend," Richard murmured, approaching the stall. Starfire's ears twitched, recognizing Richard's voice. The horse moved forward, his dark eyes watching Richard warily. "Someone's coming to help you," Richard told him, holding out an apple on his flat palm. "Don't give them too much trouble." "All right." Starfire took the apple delicately, then retreated to the back of his stall, watching Richard with what seemed like skepticism. "Yeah, I know," Richard sighed. "I don't have much hope either." Back in the main house, Richard finally opened the folder Victoria had left. The trainer's resume was impressive. Catherine Brooks, 26, with references from several prestigious stables, originally from Willow Springs. She specialized in traumatized and difficult horses. Her methods were described as intuitive and gentle but effective. Richard closed the folder and turned to the photograph on his desk. Sophia and Starfire on that last birthday, both young and full of promise. His daughter would be 26 now, the same age as this horse trainer. The thought hit him like a physical blow. He'd missed everything. Sophia's teenage years, high school graduation, first love, college. All the milestones of a young woman's life had passed without him. Richard poured himself another finger of whiskey. Despite the early hour, Victoria managed the ranch, the hands, the finances. All he had left was his grief and a horse that no one could ride. 3 days, he thought. 3 days until this Catherine Brooks arrived. He didn't hold out much hope that she could succeed where others had failed. Starfire, like Richard himself, seemed determined to remain locked in the past, waiting for a girl who would never return. What neither man nor horse realized was how dramatically their lives were about to change. 3 days passed in a blur of routine and anticipation. Richard found himself checking his watch more frequently as the morning of Catherine Brooks's arrival dawned crisp and clear. He'd made an unusual effort with his appearance, trading his typical worn flannel for a pressed shirt, trimming his beard that had grown increasingly untamed over the years. "Well, don't you look civilized?" Victoria remarked over breakfast, her tone carrying its usual edge. "One might think you're trying to impress our new hire." Richard ignored the jab, focusing instead on his coffee. What time is she expected? Around 10. Victoria checked her slim gold watch. "Though I've arranged for Miguel to meet her. You've got that meeting with the feed suppliers, remember?" Richard didn't remember, and strongly suspected there was no meeting. Victoria's arrangements had a way of keeping him isolated from ranch operations. "Cancel it," he said firmly. "I want to meet this trainer myself." Victoria's fork paused halfway to her mouth, surprise briefly crossing her features before she composed herself. "As you wish. It's your time to waste." At precisely 10 minutes before 10, a dust cloud appeared on the long driveway leading to the main house. Richard stood on the porch, watching as a beat-up blue pickup truck made its way toward them. The vehicle had seen better days, with patches of mismatched paint on the driver's side door and a cracked windshield that caught the morning sun. The truck came to a stop, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door creaked open, and a young woman stepped out. Catherine Brooks was not what Richard had expected. Her resume had painted the picture of a polished professional, but the woman who stood before him looked more like someone who'd wandered in from the wilderness. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid. Her face sun-kissed and free of makeup. She wore worn jeans, scuffed boots, and a simple chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned, muscular forearms. "Mr. Hale." She approached with an outstretched hand. Her grip was firm, her palms calloused from years of hard work. "Catherine Brooks, thanks for having me." Up close, Richard was struck by her eyes, a deep, thoughtful brown that seemed older than her 26 years. Something about them tugged at his memory, but he couldn't place the feeling. "Welcome to Silver Creek," he managed, suddenly aware he'd been staring. "Let me help you with your bags." "Got it covered?" Catherine hoisted a worn duffel bag and a smaller case that presumably held her professional equipment. "Just point me where to go." Victoria appeared at Richard's side. As if materializing from thin air, her critical gaze swept over Catherine. lingering on the patched jeans and scuffed boots. "Ms. Brooks?" she said coolly, extending manicured fingers for the briefest of handshakes. "Victoria Hale, ranch manager. We spoke on the phone." "Ma'am," Catherine nodded respectfully. But Richard noticed how she subtly straightened her posture, as if preparing for battle. "I've arranged for you to stay in the guest cottage," Victoria continued. "It's simple, but has everything you need. We expect results within 2 weeks, as discussed." "I don't put time frames on horse rehabilitation," Catherine replied evenly. "But I'll do my best." Victoria's smile tightened. "We're paying for your best and then some, Miss Brooks." Richard cleared his throat. "Why don't I show you to Starfire? You must be eager to meet him after your drive." Catherine's expression softened. "I'd like that very much." They walked in companionable silence to the old stables, leaving Victoria standing on the porch with her arms crossed. As they approached the weathered building, Richard felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling that accompanied every visit to Starfire's home. "This is the original stable," Richard explained. "Most of our horses are kept in the new facility, but Starfire, he's special." Catherine nodded, taking in the worn structure with appreciative eyes. Old buildings have character. Horses sense that history. Inside, the stable was cool and dim. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight streaming through high windows. The smell of hay, leather, and horses filled the air, a scent that never failed to transport Richard back in time. "Fair warning," Richard said as they approached Starfire's stall. "He's thrown the last 3 trainers who tried to work with him, nearly trampled one." Catherine didn't seem fazed. "Usually when a horse acts out, they're trying to tell us something. Our job is to listen." They stopped before Starfire's stall. The white horse stood in the shadows at the back, his ears pinned flat against his head at the sight of strangers. "Hey there, boy," Catherine said softly. Richard tensed, ready to pull her back if the horse charged. But something unexpected happened. Instead of approaching the stall with outstretched hands as most trainers did, Catherine simply leaned against the opposite wall and slid down to sit on the straw-covered floor. "What are you doing?" Richard asked. "Giving him a choice," she replied without taking her eyes off the horse. "He can come investigate me or not, his decision." Then, still watching Starfire, Catherine began to hum. The melody was soft and meandering at first, but slowly it took shape into something hauntingly familiar. Richard felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up as he recognized the tune, a lullaby he used to sing to Sophia every night before bed. "That song," he whispered, his voice strangled. "Where did you learn it?" Catherine looked up, confusion crossing her features. "I'm not sure. It just came to me." She shrugged apologetically. "Sorry if it bothers you. I tend to hum when I'm concentrating." Before Richard could respond, movement from the stall caught their attention. Starfire had emerged from the shadows and was approaching cautiously, his ears now perked forward with interest. "Well, hello there," Catherine murmured, remaining perfectly still as the horse stretched his neck over the stall door, nostrils flaring as he took in her scent. Richard watched in astonishment as Starfire, who had tried to trample anyone who came near him for years, extended his muzzle toward Catherine's upturned palm. The horse's breath was warm against her skin as he investigated her scent. "He likes you," Richard said, his voice barely above a whisper, afraid to break the spell. Catherine smiled, a gentle expression that transformed her serious face. "May I go in?" Richard wanted to say no, to protect this young woman from the unpredictable animal who had injured so many before her. But something in his gut told him Starfire wouldn't hurt Catherine. "Be careful," was all he said as he unlatched the stall door. Catherine entered slowly, still humming that achingly familiar lullaby. Starfire watched her, but made no move to retreat or charge. She approached with her hand extended, palm up, stopping every few steps to let the horse adjust to her presence. When she finally reached him, Starfire lowered his head. Catherine stroked his neck gently, whispering words too soft for Richard to hear. Then, to Richard's complete shock, she placed one hand on Starfire's back and smoothly mounted him. No saddle, no bridle, nothing. The horse stood perfectly still, as docile as if he'd been ridden every day of his life, instead of rejecting riders for 18 years. Richard felt his knees weaken, The last person to ride Starfire had been Sophia. How? He began, but couldn't finish the question. Catherine looked down at him from Starfire's back, her expression a mix of triumph and confusion, as if she herself didn't fully understand what had just happened. "Sometimes," she said softly, "our bodies remember things our minds have forgotten." News of Catherine's success with Starfire spread through Silver Creek Ranch like wildfire. By dinner time, every ranch hand, cook, and stable boy was talking about the new trainer who had tamed the untamable horse. Richard overheard their whispers as he made his way back to the main house, their voices a mix of awe and disbelief. Heard she just hummed a little tune and the beast went gentle as a lamb. Miguel says Mr. Hale looked like he'd seen a ghost. Richard couldn't blame them for talking. He felt like he'd witnessed something between a miracle and a haunting. The image of Catherine riding Starfire played on repeat in his mind. Her ease on the horse's back, the way her hands knew exactly where to touch, how she'd hummed Sophia's lullaby without knowing its significance. That evening, Richard found himself pulling out old photo albums that had remained closed for years. He spread them across his desk, studying every picture of Sophia with new intensity. In one, she stood beside Starfire, her small hand resting on the horse's muzzle in a gesture eerily similar to Catherine's approach. In another, she sat atop the animal, her wild curls caught by the wind, her smile wide and fearless. Victoria found him there, surrounded by the past. "Well, this is a surprise," she said from the doorway, her voice carefully neutral. "What's brought this on?" Richard glanced up. "Did you hear about Catherine and Starfire? The whole ranch is buzzing about nothing else." Victoria stepped into the room, her fingers trailing across the leather-bound albums with distaste. "One afternoon of success doesn't mean she's fixed the animal." "She hummed Sophia's lullaby," Richard said bluntly. "The one I used to sing to her every night." Victoria froze momentarily, before collecting herself. "Richard, be reasonable. It's probably a common melody." "It's not." Richard pushed a photograph toward her. Sophia on her 8th birthday, seated proudly on Starfire. "And look at her, Victoria. Really look." Victoria barely glanced at the image. "What am I supposed to be seeing?" "Nothing, never mind." Richard gathered the photos, suddenly protective of them. "I'm just tired." Victoria studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Don't do this to yourself, Richard. Don't start seeing ghosts where there are none. The girl is a horse trainer, nothing more." After she left, Richard continued his examination, moving from photos to documents. Sophia's birth certificate, school records, medical history. He pored over them like a man possessed. Then, on a hunch, he pulled out Catherine's resume and the sparse information Victoria had gathered during the hiring process. Under place of birth, the form simply read, "Unknown, raised at St. Clair's Orphanage." Sleep eluded Richard that night. He tossed and turned, his mind racing with possibilities too painful to fully contemplate. When dawn finally broke, he was already dressed and heading toward the guest cottage where Catherine had been quartered. He found her at the old stables, as he'd suspected he might. She was grooming Starfire, speaking softly to the horse as she worked. The animal stood placidly, occasionally nudging her shoulder affectionately. "You're an early riser," Richard remarked, announcing his presence. Catherine didn't startle. "Horses don't care if you're tired, Mr. Hale. They need the same care every day, rain or shine." "Richard, please." He moved closer, watching her capable hands move across Starfire's coat. "He really has taken to you." Catherine smiled. A brief but genuine expression. "We understand each other, I think. Have you always had this gift with horses?" "For as long as I can remember." She paused, then amended. "Which isn't saying much, I suppose." Richard leaned against the stall door. "Oh, my memory only goes back to about age 8. Catherine continued, brushing Starfire, her strokes long and even. "Head injury. They found me wandering on a country road. Couldn't remember my name or where I came from. Just bits and pieces." Richard's heart hammered against his ribs. That must have been difficult. St. Clair's wasn't so bad. Sister Margaret made sure I had riding lessons when they realized I had a knack for it. She shrugged. "Better childhood than many." "St. Clair's Orphanage," Richard repeated carefully. "Where is that located?" About 4 hours east of here, small place, not well known. Catherine gave him a curious look. Why do you ask? Just making conversation, Richard said, trying to keep his voice casual despite the storm raging inside him. Do you remember anything from before? Any fragments? Catherine hesitated, her brush pausing mid-stroke. Dreams, mostly. A man's voice singing, the smell of leather and hay. She gave a self-conscious laugh. And horses. Always horses. That's why Sister Margaret arranged the lessons. She thought it might help me remember. And did it. No, but it gave me a purpose. She resumed grooming. What about your daughter? Victoria mentioned she disappeared. Richard stiffened. Victoria told you about Sophia. Just the basics, that she vanished 18 years ago during a ride. That Starfire came back alone. Catherine's eyes were sympathetic. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. No, it's all right. Richard took a deep breath. She was 8. It was her birthday. We'd given her Starfire just a few months before, and she'd been begging to take him out alone. I finally agreed. She never came back. Catherine's face softened with genuine compassion. And they never found nothing. Not a trace. Richard's voice broke slightly. The police, search parties, private investigators. No one could explain how a little girl and a white horse could vanish in broad daylight. Catherine completed her grooming in silence, her movements gentle and methodical. When she finished, she turned to face Richard directly. I'm sorry for your loss, she said simply. I can't imagine how hard these 18 years must have been. Something about the way she said it, with such direct, unadorned empathy, broke through Richard's carefully maintained composure. Thank you, he managed, before quickly changing the subject. I'll let you continue your work. Victoria will want a full report on your progress with Starfire. Of course, Catherine nodded, but her expression suggested she saw through his retreat. For the next week, Richard found himself drawn to the old stables whenever Catherine was working with Starfire. He watched from a distance as she gradually introduced a saddle and bridle, speaking to the horse in low, soothing tones. Sometimes she would sing or hum, and every time it was Sophia's lullaby, the melody Richard had composed himself when his daughter was born. That song, he finally said one afternoon, unable to contain the question any longer. You've never heard it anywhere else, on the radio. Perhaps, Catherine paused, brow furrowing. I don't think so. Why? Because I wrote it, Richard said softly. For my daughter, no one else knows it. Catherine's eyes widened. That's strange. I've just always had it in my head. Before Richard could respond, Victoria appeared at the stable door, her expression thunderous. Richard, a word, she called, her tone making it clear this was not a request. In the ranch office, Victoria paced like a caged panther. You've been spending an awful lot of time with our new hire. I'm monitoring her progress with Starfire, Richard replied evenly. Is that all? Victoria stopped pacing to fix him with a hard stare. Because Miguel tells me you've been asking questions about her background. Richard met her gaze steadily. I'm curious about the woman who accomplished what no one else could. Curious, Victoria repeated, the word dripping with skepticism. Richard, I've seen that look in your eyes before. You're building some fantasy about this girl. She's the same age Sophia would be, Richard said quietly. She appeared at an orphanage 18 years ago with no memory. Right when Sophia disappeared. She knows Sophia's lullaby and Starfire, who has rejected every writer since Sophia, accepted her immediately. Victoria's laugh was sharp and dismissive. So you think what? That this drifter is your long-lost daughter? Richard, grief has finally made you lose your mind. Maybe, Richard conceded, but I'm going to find out for certain. Victoria's face hardened. Don't. For your own sake, don't go down this road again. Remember what happened with that girl in Arizona. Or the one in Wyoming. How many false hopes can your heart take? Richard turned away. This is different. It's always different. Victoria sighed, her voice softening with practiced concern. Until it's not. Richard waited until Victoria left for her weekly bridge game in town before making the call. He sat at his desk, staring at the business card he'd kept hidden in his wallet for 5 years. A private investigator named Jack Morrow, who had helped with one of the previous leads. The man had been honest when the Wyoming girl turned out not to be Sophia, saving Richard from an even more crushing disappointment. The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered, "Morrow Investigations. Jack, it's Richard Hale." A pause. "Mr. Hale. Been a long time. I need your help again." Another, longer pause. "You found another lead on your daughter." Richard hesitated. "Maybe this one's different." "They're all different, Mr. Hale," Jack said, not unkindly. "But I'm listening." Richard explained about Catherine, her age, her appearance at St. Clair's orphanage 18 years ago, her connection with Starfire, and the lullaby. "I hear what you're saying," Jack replied when Richard finished. "But I remember the Wyoming girl seemed promising too, and before her, the one from Arizona." "I know how it sounds," Richard admitted, "but I need to be sure." A heavy sigh came through the receiver. "What do you need from me?" "Background check on Catherine Brooks, birth records, any information on how she ended up at St. Clair's, and..." Richard swallowed hard. "I need a DNA test." Discreetly, "DNA takes time and money, Mr. Hale." "I have both. Just be careful. My sister can't know about this." "Understood. I'll need something from the girl. Hair sample would be easiest." "I'll manage it," Richard promised. "How soon can you start?" "I'll drive out tomorrow." "Got a recent photo of her?" Richard realized he didn't. "I'll take one casually." After hanging up, Richard felt a strange mixture of hope and guilt. If he was wrong, again, he'd have invaded Catherine's privacy for nothing. But if he was right, the next day, Richard invited Catherine to join him for an early dinner at the main house, ostensibly to discuss her progress with Starfire. He'd prepared a simple meal himself instead of asking the housekeeper to cook, not wanting word to get back to Victoria. "This is unexpected," Catherine said as she entered the dining room, looking slightly uncomfortable in clean jeans and a pressed shirt. "I usually just grab something at the cottage." "Consider it a thank you for your work with Starfire," Richard replied, pulling out a chair for her. "I've never seen him respond to anyone the way he does with you." As they ate, Richard casually steered the conversation toward Catherine's background, asking about her life at St. Clair's and her career with horses. "Sister Margaret noticed I had a way with the difficult cases," Catherine explained, relaxing as they talked. "The orphanage kept a few horses for therapy programs. There was this one stallion, completely untrusting of humans. Something about him just spoke to me." "How so?" Richard asked. Genuinely interested, Catherine considered this as she took a sip of water. "It's like, I can feel what they're feeling. Their fear, their confusion." She gave an embarrassed laugh. "Sounds crazy, I know." "Not at all," Richard assured her. "Some people just have a gift." As they finished dessert, apple pie that Richard had picked up from town, he casually took out his phone. "Would you mind if I took a picture for the ranch records?" he added hastily. "Victoria likes to document everything." "Sure," Catherine shrugged, clearly finding the request odd but willing to comply. Richard snapped several photos, making sure to get clear shots of her face from different angles. As Catherine helped clear the dishes, despite his protests, Richard noticed a long, dark hair on the shoulder of her shirt. When she turned to carry plates to the kitchen, he carefully plucked it and slipped it into an envelope he'd prepared. The guilt returned tenfold, but Richard pushed it aside. He needed to know. Over the next few days, Richard established a routine of visiting the stables during Catherine's sessions with Starfire. The horse continued to make remarkable progress, now accepting not only Catherine as a rider, but also allowing her to lead him around the property. Richard watched their easy rapport with a mixture of wonder and increasingly firm conviction. On Thursday, Jack Morrow arrived under the guise of a feed supplier. Richard met him in the old barn, away from prying eyes. "Got what you asked for," Jack said without preamble, handing over a manila envelope. "Background check on Catherine Brooks. Not much there, to be honest. Orphanage records confirm what she told you. Found wandering on County Road 17 about 18 years ago, suffering from head trauma and amnesia." Richard's heart beat faster. County Road 17 was less than 50 miles from the ranch. "The doctors estimated her age at around 8, Jack continued. "No identification. No one reported a missing child matching her description. At least not locally." "What do you mean, not locally?" Richard asked sharply. Jack sighed. This is the part you won't like, Mr. Hale. I checked missing persons reports within a 100-mile radius. None matched. Your daughter's case was filed in this county, but apparently the connection was never made. How is that possible? Richard demanded. A little girl goes missing from a prominent ranch, and 50 miles away, another little girl is found wandering with amnesia, and no one puts it together. Different jurisdictions, and from what I gathered, the girl, Catherine, had been badly injured. Concussion, exposure. She was in rough shape when they found her. The working theory was that she'd been abandoned by transients passing through. Richard clutched the envelope tightly. And the DNA. I need more time for those results. But I did find something else interesting. Jack pulled out another envelope. I tracked down the original report from the driver who found her on the road. Guy named Henry Weaver, retired now. He remembers it clearly because the little girl kept repeating one word. Starfire, Richard whispered. Jack looked surprised. How did you know? Richard felt the room spin slightly. Lucky guess, he managed. When will you have the DNA results? 2 weeks, minimum. These things take time, Mr. Hale, especially when we're being discreet. After Jack left, Richard retreated to his study, locking the door behind him. He spread the investigator's findings across his desk, reading each page multiple times. There wasn't much. Medical reports noting a severe concussion consistent with a fall, admission forms to St. Clair's, school records showing Catherine as a quiet, bright student with a special affinity for animals. What struck Richard most was the timing. Catherine had been found on April 12th, exactly 3 days after Sophia disappeared. 3 days during which a scared, injured child could have wandered through the rural countryside, perhaps trying to find her way home. A soft knock at his door startled him from his thoughts. Richard quickly gathered the papers, shoving them into his desk drawer, before opening the door to find Victoria standing there. You missed dinner, she said, her eyes narrowing as she took in his disheveled appearance. And Miguel mentioned you had a visitor today, someone asking about feed prices. Richard had prepared for this. Jack Thompson from Valley Suppliers. Their prices are better than what we're currently paying. Victoria didn't look convinced. Funny. I handle all the supplier contracts and I don't recall scheduling a meeting. I took the initiative, Richard replied evenly. I'm still the owner of this ranch, Victoria, even if I've let you run things day to day. Something flashed in Victoria's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or concern, but she quickly masked it. Of course, Richard. It's your ranch. Her tone softened. I'm just worried about you. You've seemed distracted lately. I'm fine, Richard assured her. Better than I've been in a while, actually. Victoria studied him for a long moment. It's the Brooks girl, isn't it, Richard? Please tell me you're not going down that road again. What road would that be? He asked innocently. You know exactly what I mean. Searching for Sophia in every young woman who crosses your path. It's not healthy. Richard, and it's not fair to that poor girl. Richard met his sister's gaze steadily. Good night, Victoria. After she left, Richard returned to the documents, focusing on a medical report that mentioned a small, distinctive birthmark behind Catherine's right ear, a crescent-shaped mark that the examining doctor had noted. With trembling hands, Richard pulled out Sophia's medical records. There, in black and white, was the pediatrician's note about her birthmark, a small crescent behind her right ear, a charming echo of her mother's. The next morning, Richard watched from his study window as Catherine worked with Starfire in the paddock. Her movements sure and graceful. She reached up at one point to adjust her hat, and the morning sunlight caught her profile. The resemblance to Maria, Richard's late wife, was suddenly, painfully obvious. It's her, Richard whispered to the empty room. It has to be. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon as Catherine finished her evening session with Starfire. The air hung heavy with the promise of a storm, the kind that rolled in suddenly across the open ranch lands. Catherine patted Starfire's neck, whispering praise as she led him back to his stall. Good boy, she murmured, offering him an apple from her pocket. Same time tomorrow. The horse nuzzled her hand gently, a far cry from the aggressive animal everyone had described when she first arrived. Catherine smiled, feeling that familiar, inexplicable connection that had been there from the first moment. As she secured Starfire's stall and began tidying up, Catherine couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She glanced toward the stable entrance, but saw only shadows. Shrugging it off, she continued her work, humming that haunting melody that seemed to soothe both her and the horse. On the other side of the stable, Victoria Hale stood in the shadows, watching. Her usually immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, her eyes sharp with calculation. She'd spent the past 2 days observing Catherine and Richard, noting their growing closeness with increasing alarm. Victoria had seen this before, Richard latching onto some young woman with a passing resemblance to Maria, or some tenuous connection to horses. It had happened twice before, each time ending in bitter disappointment that drove her brother deeper into his isolation. But this time felt different. This time, Richard was animated, engaged, almost hopeful in a way she hadn't seen in 18 years. It terrified her. When Catherine finally left, Victoria stepped into the empty stable. She moved silently to Starfire's stall, eyeing the magnificent animal with cold assessment. The horse immediately sensed her presence, backing away with ears flattened. "At least you have good instincts," she muttered. Victoria's gaze traveled from the horse to the stall latch. It was a simple mechanism, secure enough to contain a cooperative animal but easily opened if one knew how. With a quick glance around to ensure she remained alone, Victoria released the latch, leaving it closed but unsecured. "Let's see how valuable our miracle worker is when her prize project runs away," she whispered, before slipping back into the shadows. Later that night, the storm hit with unexpected ferocity. Rain lashed against windows, and thunder boomed across the valley. Catherine sat in her cottage, unable to sleep as lightning illuminated the room in brilliant flashes. Something felt wrong, a nagging sensation she couldn't identify. On impulse, she pulled on her rain gear and boots. "Just a quick check," she told herself, grabbing a flashlight before heading out into the deluge. The wind nearly knocked her off her feet as she battled her way toward the old stable. Rain stung her face, and mud sucked at her boots with each step. When she finally reached the building, she was soaked despite her waterproof jacket. Inside, the stable was eerily quiet except for the drumming of rain on the roof. Catherine swept her flashlight across the stalls, checking each horse. When the beam reached Starfire's stall, her heart stopped. The door hung open, and the stall was empty. "No," she gasped, rushing forward. "No, no, no," panic rising in her throat. Catherine ran back outside, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. "Starfire," she called, her voice lost in the howling wind. She knew the odds of finding a horse in this weather, in the dark, were nearly impossible. But something deep inside wouldn't let her give up. Catherine headed toward the north pasture, where she'd been working with Starfire earlier. The rain had turned the ground treacherous, and twice she slipped, landing hard on her knees. Still, she pressed on, calling the horse's name between crashes of thunder. Nearly an hour into her search, thoroughly drenched and muddy, Catherine spotted movement along the fence line. She trained her flashlight on the area and caught a glimpse of white. "Starfire!" The horse was agitated, racing along the fence in obvious distress. Catherine approached carefully, speaking in that soothing tone that always calmed him. "Easy, boy. It's just me. You're okay." Starfire stopped, nostrils flaring as he recognized her voice. Catherine continued her approach, still murmuring reassurances. Just as she was within reach, lightning struck a nearby tree with a deafening crack. The flash and thunderous boom sent Starfire into a panic. He reared, his powerful front hooves slashing through the air mere inches from Catherine's face. She stumbled backward, slipping in the mud and falling hard. Pain shot through her ankle as she tried to scramble away from the terrified horse. Starfire bolted, disappearing into the darkness beyond her flashlight's beam. "Starfire!" Catherine called again. Struggling to her feet, her ankle throbbed, barely supporting her weight, but she limped forward, following the sound of retreating hoofbeats. The rain seemed to intensify, becoming a solid wall of water that limited visibility to just a few feet. Catherine was completely disoriented now, uncertain which direction led back to the ranch house. Still, she pushed on, desperate to find the horse before he injured himself. A steep slope appeared suddenly before her. Catherine tried to stop, but the mud gave way beneath her boots. She fell, tumbling down the incline, and landing with a splash in the creek at the bottom. Usually a gentle stream, now a rushing torrent swollen by the storm. The impact knocked the breath from her lungs. Cold water swirled around her, tugging at her clothes. Catherine fought to stand, but her injured ankle collapsed beneath her. As she fell again, her head struck a rock partially submerged in the churning water. Pain exploded behind her eyes, followed by a strange flood of fragmented images. A birthday cake with 8 candles. A man's smiling face. The rhythmic motion of riding a white horse through sun-dappled fields. Then darkness claimed her. Richard woke to frantic pounding on his bedroom door. He squinted at the clock. 2:17 a.m. Before grabbing his robe, Miguel, one of the senior ranch hands, stood in the hallway, rain dripping from his slicker. "Mr. Hale, sorry to wake you, but Starfire's loose. Found his stall open when I was checking on the animals because of the storm." Richard was instantly alert. "Where's Catherine?" "That's the thing. Sir, I went to her cottage to tell her, but she's not there. Boots and rain gear are gone. She's out in this." Richard moved quickly, pulling on clothes. "Get a search party together, lanterns, ropes, first aid kit, and call Dr. Brennan just in case." Within 20 minutes, Richard led a team of ranch hands into the storm. They split into groups, each taking different sections of the property. Richard headed north, following his instinct and knowledge of where Catherine usually worked with Starfire. The storm showed no signs of letting up as they searched, calling Catherine's name into the wind. After nearly an hour, one of the hands spotted Starfire, huddled beneath a stand of trees, trembling but uninjured. "If we found the horse, where's Catherine?" Richard demanded, a cold dread settling in his stomach. They expanded their search, moving in a grid pattern away from where Starfire had been found. It was Pedro, the youngest ranch hand, who spotted the flashlight, its beam a weak glow at the edge of the creek. "Over there!" he shouted, pointing. Richard ran, his heart in his throat. The beam led them to the creek's edge, now a rushing current of muddy water. His flashlight swept the area, finally catching on a still form half submerged near the bank. "Catherine!" Richard slid down the slope, heedless of the mud and rocks. He waded into the frigid water, reaching her in seconds. She lay motionless, one arm caught on a branch that had kept her from being swept downstream. With the help of 2 ranch hands, Richard carried Catherine's unconscious form back to solid ground. Her skin was pale and cold, a gash on her temple still seeping blood. "She's breathing," Richard confirmed, pressing fingers to her neck to find a weak but steady pulse. "Let's get her back to the house, carefully." They fashioned a makeshift stretcher from rain slickers and carried Catherine back through the storm. By the time they reached the main house, Dr. Brennan was waiting. Victoria stood in the foyer, her face a mask of concern that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What happened?" she demanded. "Found her in the creek," Richard explained tersely as they carried Catherine to a guest room. "Starfire got loose somehow." Victoria's expression flickered. "How unfortunate. Those old stall latches must be faulty." Richard had no time to contemplate his sister's odd tone. He hovered anxiously as Dr. Brennan examined Catherine, checking her pupils and the wound on her head. "Mild concussion, sprained ankle, hypothermia," the doctor announced finally. "She needs dry clothes, warm blankets, and monitoring through the night. She's lucky. It could have been much worse." After the doctor left, Richard sat beside Catherine's bed. Watching the slow rise and fall of her chest, Maria's photograph sat on the nightstand. He'd placed it there deliberately, struck by the resemblance that seemed more pronounced with each passing day. Victoria appeared in the doorway. "You should get some rest." "Richard, I can watch her." "No," Richard replied firmly. "I'll stay." Something in his tone made Victoria's eyes narrow. "You barely know this girl." Richard looked up, meeting his sister's gaze. "Don't I?" Victoria stiffened almost imperceptibly. What's that supposed to mean? Before Richard could respond, Catherine stirred, a soft moan escaping her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened. For a moment, she looked disoriented, her gaze unfocused. Then her eyes found Richard's face. "You were singing," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "In my dream, you were singing that song." Richard took her hand gently. "Rest now. You're safe." Catherine's eyes drifted closed again, but her fingers tightened around his, holding on as if she'd found something long lost, and was afraid to let go. Richard paced outside Dr. Brennan's office, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. The morning sun streamed through the windows, a stark contrast to last night's violent storm. Catherine had been moved to the clinic in town for further examination. Despite her protests that she felt fine, Mr. Hale, Dr. Brennan appeared in the doorway, gesturing for Richard to enter. "Please sit down." "How is she?" Richard asked, remaining standing. "Remarkably well, considering. The concussion is mild, and the sprained ankle will heal with rest." The doctor removed his glasses, polishing them thoughtfully. "But there's something else." Richard tensed. "What?" "The MRI showed evidence of an old head injury. Significant trauma that likely occurred in childhood." Dr. Brennan replaced his glasses. "When I mentioned it, Miss Brooks told me about her amnesia. Said she's been experiencing headaches and unusual dreams since arriving at your ranch." "Dreams?" Richard leaned forward. She didn't elaborate. The doctor studied Richard's face. "Is there something I should know?" "Mr. Hale." Before Richard could respond, the clinic door swung open and Jack Morrow entered, looking as out of place in the small-town medical facility as a wolf in a chicken coop. He nodded to Richard. "Got your message. Sorry about Miss Brooks. She doing okay?" Richard made hasty introductions. "Jack's an old friend," he explained to the doctor, who looked skeptical but didn't press. "Can I see her?" Richard asked. "She's resting now, but yes, briefly." Dr. Brennan led them down a short hallway to a private room where Catherine lay sleeping, her face peaceful despite the bandage at her temple. "I'll give you a few minutes," the doctor said before leaving. Jack stayed by the door while Richard approached the bed. Catherine's dark hair was spread across the pillow, the resemblance to Maria so striking it made his chest ache. Gently, he brushed aside her hair to reveal her right ear, searching for the crescent-shaped birthmark. There it was, exactly as described in Sophia's medical records. "Mr. Hale." Jack's low voice drew his attention. The investigator held up a manila envelope. "Those results you were waiting for came in early." Richard's heart thundered in his ears. "And let's talk outside." In the hallway, Jack opened the envelope and handed Richard a document filled with scientific terminology. "Bottom line," he said quietly. "The DNA comparison between your sample and the girl's hair shows a 99.98% probability of a parent-child relationship." The world seemed to tilt beneath Richard's feet. He reached for the wall to steady himself. "She's your daughter," Jack confirmed. "Catherine Brooks is Sophia Hale." Richard closed his eyes, overwhelmed by confirmation of what his heart had already known. "I need to sit down." They moved to a small waiting area. Richard stared at the DNA results, reading the same lines over and over as if they might somehow change. "There's more," Jack said, pulling out additional papers. "Once I had the DNA match, I dug deeper into what happened 18 years ago. Found police reports about a car accident on County Road 17, 3 days after Sophia disappeared. The driver who found Catherine," Richard murmured. "No, different incident." Jack leaned forward. "Single vehicle crash. Driver was a man named Deke Carver. Ring any bells?" Richard shook his head. "He didn't survive. But here's the kicker. He had a significant amount of cash on him. Cash that was traced back to a bank withdrawal made by Victoria Hale on the morning Sophia disappeared." Richard felt as if he'd been struck. "That's impossible. Victoria wouldn't." $25,000, Mr. Hale, in cash, withdrawn personally by your sister hours before your daughter vanished. Jack's expression was grim. "I found a witness. Former stable hand who left your employ right after Sophia disappeared. He remembers seeing Victoria talking to a man matching Carver's description the week before." "Are you saying my sister paid someone to kidnap my daughter?" The words tasted like poison. "Evidence points that way. Carver had a record, mostly petty stuff, but he'd done a stint for a botched kidnapping in Arizona." Jack spread the police reports on the table. "Theory is, he took the girl but crashed while fleeing. She was thrown from the vehicle, sustained a head injury, wandered off in confusion. Carver died at the scene." Richard struggled to process the horrifying scenario. "But why would Victoria do this? She's Sophia's aunt." "Can't answer that," Jack admitted. "But I can tell you this. 6 months after Sophia disappeared, Victoria became signatory on all your accounts. Within a year, she was effectively running the ranch. And according to county records, If you died without an heir, she'd inherit everything. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. For 18 years, Victoria had watched him suffer, knowing all along what had happened to Sophia. For 18 years, she'd been the supportive sister while orchestrating his isolation and depression. "Mr. Hale," Jack's voice pulled him back. "What do you want to do with this information?" Richard stood, a cold determination replacing his shock. "First, I'm going to take my daughter home. Then I'm going to confront my sister." When Catherine, Sophia, awoke, Richard was sitting beside her bed. She blinked at him groggily. "Mr. Hale." "Richard, please." He smiled, fighting to keep his voice steady. "How are you feeling?" "Like I went 10 rounds with a bull." She attempted to sit up, wincing. "Did they find Starfire?" "He's fine, not a scratch on him." Richard hesitated. "Catherine, there's something important I need to discuss with you." She must have sensed the gravity in his tone because she stilled, watching him warily. "What is it?" Richard took a deep breath. I know, that you're my daughter." Catherine stared at him, her expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something like fear. "That's not possible." "It is." Gently, Richard explained everything. The DNA test, the accident, the evidence pointing to Victoria's involvement. As he spoke, Catherine's hand crept up to touch the bandage on her temple, her eyes growing distant. "I've been having these dreams," she whispered when he finished. "Ever since I arrived at the ranch, a birthday cake with 8 candles, a man singing, that melody." Her voice broke. "Are you saying those aren't just dreams? They're memories?" "I believe they are." Richard reached for her hand, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. "Sophia, that was your name. You disappeared on your 8th birthday, April 9th, 18 years ago." Catherine closed her eyes, tears seeping from beneath her lashes. It's too much." "I know." Richard squeezed her hand. "Take all the time you need." She opened her eyes, studying his face as if searching for something. "Can I see a picture of her? Of me?" Richard pulled out his wallet and removed a small photo. Sophia on her 7th birthday. Grinning widely at the camera, he handed it to Catherine, who took it with trembling fingers. For a long moment, she stared at the image. Then she touched her own face, tracing the line of her jaw, the curve of her smile that matched the little girl in the photograph. "I don't remember," she said finally, her voice small. "I want to, but I don't. Memory or not." "DNA doesn't lie," Richard said softly. "You're my daughter, Sophia." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes swimming with tears. "What do we do now?" "First, you rest and recover. Then, when you're ready, we go home together." Dr. Brennan discharged Catherine the following morning. With strict instructions for rest and follow-up care, Jack Morrow provided a discreet security detail, concerned that Victoria might react unpredictably once confronted. The drive back to Silver Creek Ranch was quiet, Catherine lost in thought beside Richard. He didn't push, understanding that she needed time to process the earth-shattering revelation. As they turned onto the long driveway leading to the ranch, Catherine suddenly spoke. "I want to see him." "Who?" "Starfire." She smiled faintly. "If I really am Sophia, he knew before anyone, didn't he?" Richard felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Yes, he did." They drove past the main house toward the old stables. Victoria's car was gone. She'd left for a cattle auction in the next county, unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. At the stables, Catherine limped to Starfire's stall, her injured ankle still tender. The horse approached immediately, nickering softly in greeting. She stroked his muzzle, tears streaming freely down her face now. "He was a birthday present," Richard said, watching their reunion. "You'd been begging for a horse of your own for months." Catherine nodded, not trusting herself to speak. "You named him Starfire because of the star-shaped mark on his forehead," Richard continued. "You said it looked like he had fire in his soul." Catherine's hand moved to the white star marking. "I remember," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I remember choosing him. You let me pick from 3 colts. I chose him because he looked right at me, not at you or the treats in your hand." Richard felt his heart soar. "That's right. You said he saw you, not just what you could give him." Catherine turned to face him, her expression a mixture of wonder and pain. I remember that day. Why do I remember that day but not the rest? Memory is strange, Richard said gently. The doctor said some things might come back in fragments. Some might never return. Catherine nodded, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. I want to remember. I want to know who I was, who I am. We have time, Richard assured her. All the time in the world to figure it out, together, as they walked back toward the house. Catherine's hand slipped into Richard's, a gesture so natural it seemed as if the 18 years of separation had never happened. But ahead of them lay a confrontation that couldn't be avoided, the moment when Victoria would face the consequences of her betrayal. Victoria's heels clicked sharply against the marble foyer as she returned from the cattle auction, her purchases having gone exactly as planned. The ranch house was unusually quiet, the normal bustle of staff conspicuously absent. She paused, listening for movement. "Richard," she called, dropping her designer handbag onto a side table. "Anyone home?" The subtle clearing of a throat drew her attention to the study doorway. Richard stood there, his posture rigid, his face a careful mask. "Welcome back," he said, his voice unnervingly calm. "How was the auction?" Victoria studied her brother, sensing something amiss in his too casual tone. "Successful. Got those Hereford bulls you've been wanting." She moved toward the kitchen. "Is Anna off today?" "I'm parched. I gave everyone the afternoon off." Victoria stopped, turning slowly. "That's unlike you." "Is it?" Richard stepped into the hallway. "Or is it unlike the man you've cultivated for the past 18 years? Broken, dependent, malleable." A flicker of unease passed behind Victoria's eyes, quickly masked with a practiced look of concern. "Richard, what are you talking about? Are you feeling all right? Better than I have in nearly 2 decades." He gestured toward the study. "We need to talk." Victoria followed him with measured steps, her mind racing. Inside the wood-paneled room, she froze at the sight of Catherine Brooks seated in one of the leather armchairs, ankle bandaged, a fading bruise visible at her temple. "Ms. Brooks," Victoria acknowledged coolly, "I see you've recovered from your accident." "No thanks to you," Richard said quietly, moving to stand beside Catherine's chair. "The stable latch didn't fail on its own, did it, Victoria?" Victoria's laugh was brittle. "What are you implying, that I had something to do with the horse escaping?" She shook her head dismissively. "You've always had a flair for drama, Richard. And you've always been a talented liar." Richard placed a hand on Catherine's shoulder. "But the game is over." Victoria's gaze darted between them, calculating. "What game, Richard? I'm concerned about you. Ever since this woman arrived, you've been acting strangely." "Do you know why?" Richard reached for a folder on his desk, sliding out several documents. "Because I recognized her on some level from the very beginning. I knew who she was. And who might that be?" Victoria's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "My daughter," Richard's words hung in the air between them. "Your niece, Sophia." Victoria didn't move, didn't blink, her face a perfect mask of practiced control. Then slowly she laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "Oh, Richard, not again." She turned to Catherine with false sympathy. "I apologize for my brother. He's done this before. Convinced himself some random young woman is his long-lost daughter. The grief, you understand." Catherine remained silent, watching the exchange with wary eyes. "Except this time, it's true." Richard handed Victoria the DNA results. 99.98% match. Catherine Brooks is Sophia Hale. Victoria glanced at the document without taking it. "Papers can be forged." "Science doesn't lie," Richard countered. "But you do, Victoria. You've been lying for 18 years. Something shifted in Victoria's demeanor. A subtle hardening, a pulling back. "You're not well, Richard. You need help." "What I need are answers." Richard spread more documents across the desk. Bank statements, police reports, witness testimonies. Like why you withdrew $25,000 in cash the morning Sophia disappeared, or why that money was found on a dead man 3 days later. A man with a criminal record who'd been seen talking to you the week before. Victoria's complexion paled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "This is absurd. I won't stand here and listen to these delusions." "His name was Deke Carver." Catherine spoke for the first time, her voice quiet but firm. "He was hired to kidnap me, but he crashed his car on County Road 17. I was thrown from the vehicle. That's how I got the head injury that caused my amnesia." Victoria's eyes narrowed as she finally addressed Catherine directly. "You can't possibly remember that." "No," Catherine admitted. "But the evidence does." She tapped the police reports. "Your mistake was paying him in cash that could be traced back to you." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Then explain it to us," Richard demanded, his patience wearing thin. "Explain why my sister would pay a known criminal to kidnap my 8-year-old daughter." Victoria moved to the bar cart, pouring herself a generous measure of scotch. Her hand trembled slightly, the only visible sign of her inner turmoil. "You always were too trusting, Richard, too willing to believe the best in people." She took a long sip before turning to face them. "Even now, you're trusting this stranger based on some paperwork and a convenient story." "She's not a stranger," Richard said softly. "She's my daughter." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "Your daughter is dead, Richard. Accept it and move on." The room fell silent, the accusation hanging heavy in the air. "If that were true," Catherine said finally, "you'd be the one who killed her." Victoria's eyes flashed dangerously. "Watch your tongue, girl." "Why did you do it?" Richard pressed, moving closer to his sister. "Was it the money? The ranch? Was your own niece worth so little to you?" Victoria drained her glass, setting it down with deliberate care. "You have no idea what it was like living in your shadow. Father's golden child, the favored one, handed everything on a silver platter while I got the scraps." "That's not true," Richard protested. "Father loved us equally. He left you the ranch," Victoria spat. "4 generations of Hale blood and sweat. And he left it all to you because you were the son. Never mind that I was the one with the business acumen, the drive, the vision for what this place could become." Her voice hardened. "Then you married that woman." "Don't," Richard warned. "Don't say a word against Maria." Victoria ignored him. "Perfect Maria, who gave you the perfect daughter, completing your perfect little family, the 3 of you, so content in your bubble while I stood on the outside looking in. So you decided to destroy our happiness." Richard's voice broke. "Your own flesh and blood. Victoria, an innocent child. She wasn't supposed to get hurt." Victoria snapped, her composure finally shattering. "Carver was just supposed to take her away. Somewhere far, but safe. A nice family in another state. You'd never find her, but she'd be alive and well." Catherine stood up, wincing as she put weight on her injured ankle. "You hired someone to rip me from my home, my father, everything I knew. And you think that wasn't supposed to hurt me?" Victoria's eyes narrowed. "It was a kindness. Richard was a mess after Maria died. Drinking too much, neglecting the ranch, clinging to you like you were his last lifeline. You deserved better than a father who could barely function." "That wasn't your decision to make," Catherine said, her voice trembling with emotion. "You were holding him back," Victoria continued, her justification spilling out in a torrent. "As long as he had you, he'd never move forward, never see what needed to be done with the ranch. And I was right. Once you were gone, I was able to modernize operations, double profits, put Silver Creek on the map, while watching your brother suffer every single day," Richard said quietly. "Knowing you were the cause of his pain." Victoria met his gaze without flinching. "I did what needed to be done. For the ranch, for the Hale legacy. The Hale legacy is family," Richard countered. "Something you clearly never understood." Victoria turned away, moving toward the window that overlooked the sprawling ranch lands. "So, what now? You've found your precious Sophia. You've uncovered my great sin. What's your plan, Richard?" Her voice took on a mocking edge. "Turn me over to the police. Ruin the Hale name with a public scandal. Destroy everything I've built here." "You didn't build anything," Richard said coldly. "You stole it. From me, from my daughter, from our family name." Victoria spun around, her face flushed with anger. "I saved this ranch, while you were drowning in grief and whiskey. I was the one who kept it from falling apart. Everything Silver Creek is today is because of me. And it was all built on the abduction of a child," Catherine interjected. "On my lost childhood, my stolen memories, my father's 18 years of suffering." Victoria's gaze cut to Catherine, assessing her with new calculation. You have no memories of being Sophia Hale, no connection to this place beyond what Richard has told you and some questionable DNA test. Walk away now. Take a generous settlement, and we can all move forward. Are you trying to bribe me? Catherine asked incredulously. I'm offering you a clean slate, Victoria countered smoothly. $5 million. Start a new life anywhere you want, with any identity you choose. Richard stepped between them. Enough, Victoria. It's over. Victoria's eyes hardened. Nothing is over until I say it is. She reached for her handbag, withdrawing a small revolver that gleamed dully in the afternoon light. I've worked too hard and sacrificed too much to lose everything now, Catherine gasped as Victoria aimed the gun steadily at Richard's chest. Victoria, think about what you're doing, Richard said calmly, though his heart hammered in his chest. This isn't you. You have no idea who I am, Victoria replied coldly. You never did. Time seemed to stand still in the study as Victoria held the gun steadily pointed at Richard's chest. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the ranch. Unaware of the drama unfolding inside the Hale family home. Put the gun down, Victoria, Richard said, his voice remarkably calm. You don't want to add murder to your crimes. Victoria's laugh was brittle. Don't I? What exactly do I have to lose at this point? Her finger tightened slightly on the trigger. You've already decided I'm a monster. Catherine moved forward instinctively, but Richard motioned for her to stay back. You're not a monster, Richard said carefully. You're my sister. We grew up together in this house. Remember how Dad used to take us riding at dawn? How Mom would have hot chocolate waiting when we came back freezing? A flicker of emotion crossed Victoria's face but vanished quickly. Ancient history. Family isn't history, Richard pressed. It's who we are, Victoria. Family, Victoria spat the word. Was it family when Dad left everything to you? Was it family when you retreated into your grief after Maria died, leaving me to pick up the pieces? Her hand trembled slightly, but the gun remained aimed at Richard's heart. I gave 18 years to this ranch. 18 years of my life building something from the mess you left. And I'm grateful for that, Richard said. But nothing justifies what you did to Sophia. Victoria's gaze shifted to Catherine, who stood pale but determined beside Richard. You won't win, Victoria told her coldly. Even if I go to prison, you'll never truly belong here. You're Catherine Brooks, a nobody with borrowed memories. Catherine took a step forward despite Richard's warning gesture. I may not remember everything about being Sophia Hale, but I know who I am now, and I know you're afraid. Afraid, Victoria scoffed. Of what? Of losing control, Catherine said simply. You controlled everything for 18 years. The ranch, the staff, your brother's broken heart. Now it's slipping away, and you'd rather kill your own brother than face that. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. You have no idea what you're talking about. I think I do. Catherine took another careful step forward. I spent my whole life feeling like I didn't belong anywhere, like something vital was missing. Now I know why. Her voice strengthened. You stole my childhood, my memories, my identity, but I won't let you take my father too. For a moment, something like doubt flickered across Victoria's face. Then her expression hardened again. Touching speech, but it changes nothing. This ends now, Victoria, Richard said firmly. Sheriff Larson is on his way. Jack called him as soon as we found the evidence. Victoria's eyes darted to the window, then back to Richard. You're bluffing. Am I? Listen. In the distance, the faint wail of sirens could be heard approaching the ranch. Victoria's hand wavered slightly, panic flashing across her features. You've ruined everything. You did that yourself. 18 years ago, Richard replied. With a sudden, desperate movement, Victoria grabbed Catherine, pulling her close with the gun now pressed to her temple. Catherine gasped, stumbling on her injured ankle. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria said, her voice eerily calm. I'm walking out of here with your precious daughter. You're going to tell the sheriff it was all a misunderstanding. Once I'm safely away, I'll release her. Victoria, don't do this, Richard pleaded, his calm facade finally cracking. Let her go, take me instead. How noble, Victoria sneered. But I need leverage, not a middle-aged man slowing me down. She backed toward the door, dragging Catherine with her. "Don't try to follow us." Catherine locked eyes with Richard, a silent message passing between them. As Victoria reached for the doorknob, Catherine suddenly went limp, her full weight dropping downward. Surprised by the movement, Victoria's grip loosened momentarily. Catherine seized the opportunity, driving her elbow hard into Victoria's ribs while twisting away from the gun. The weapon discharged, the shot deafening in the confined space of the study. A crystal decanter on the bar cart shattered, sending glass and bourbon spraying across the room. Richard lunged forward as Catherine and Victoria grappled for control of the gun. "Stop!" he shouted, trying to separate them. In the confusion, Victoria broke free, still clutching the revolver. Her usually perfect hair was disheveled, her breathing ragged. "Stay back," she warned, waving the gun between Richard and Catherine. "I swear I'll shoot." Outside, the sirens grew louder. Victoria backed toward the French doors leading to the veranda, her options dwindling with each passing second. "It's over, Victoria," Richard said softly. "Don't make this worse." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Worse? How could it possibly get worse?" She glanced over her shoulder at the sprawling ranch lands beyond the veranda. "Everything I've worked for, everything I've sacrificed for, gone in an instant." "Not everything," Catherine said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "You still have a chance to do the right thing." Victoria's laugh was hollow. "The right thing? Like turning myself in? Spending the rest of my life in prison while you two play happy family on my ranch?" "Your ranch?" Richard questioned. "Is that truly all you care about, Victoria? Land and money?" "It's my legacy," Victoria cried, a note of desperation in her voice. "What else do I have?" Richard took a cautious step toward his sister. "You have me, despite everything. You're still my sister." For a brief moment, Victoria's guard seemed to lower, uncertainty crossing her features. The gun dipped slightly in her hand. Then the study doors burst open. Sheriff Larson entered, weapon drawn, flanked by 2 deputies. "Drop the gun, Ms. Hale." Victoria's expression hardened instantly, with a fluid movement that took everyone by surprise. She turned and fired toward the antique grandfather clock in the corner of the room. The glass face shattered spectacularly, drawing instinctive attention from everyone in the room. In that split second of distraction, Victoria bolted through the French doors onto the veranda. "Stop her!" Sheriff Larson shouted as he and the deputies gave chase. Richard helped Catherine to her feet. "Are you all right?" She nodded, though her face was pale with shock. "We need to go after her." They followed the law enforcement officers outside just in time to see Victoria sprinting toward the old stables. The sheriff and 1 deputy pursued her, while the other circled around the back of the building to cut off her escape. "She's heading for Starfire," Catherine realized aloud. "He's the fastest horse on the property." Richard's blood ran cold. If Victoria managed to mount Starfire, the horse's unpredictable nature could be disastrous for everyone involved. They hurried across the yard, Catherine limping but determined. By the time they reached the stable, they could hear shouting inside. "Miss Hale, drop the weapon and come out with your hands up." Sheriff Larson's voice echoed through the wooden structure. A shot rang out, followed by the frightened neighing of horses. Richard and Catherine exchanged alarmed glances before rushing inside. The scene that greeted them was chaos. Several horses were rearing in their stalls, panicked by the gunshot. Victoria stood in front of Starfire's stall, her back against the door, the gun still in her hand. Sheriff Larson and his deputies had taken cover behind feed barrels and support beams. "Stay back," Victoria warned, her voice shrill. "I'll shoot the horse." "Victoria!" "No." Richard moved forward, despite Catherine's attempt to hold him back. Victoria swung the gun toward him, her eyes wild with desperation. "I told you to stay back." Behind her, Starfire whinnied anxiously. Sensing the tension, the horse kicked at his stall door, causing Victoria to stumble slightly. "The horse isn't the problem, Victoria," Richard said, taking another step forward. "This is between you and me." Victoria's hand trembled. "There's no way out of this for me, is there?" "There's always a way," Catherine said, moving to stand beside Richard, but not with more violence. For a long moment, Victoria stood frozen, the gun wavering between them and the approaching sheriff. Then, with a sound like a wounded animal, she turned suddenly and flung open Starfire's stall door. "Victoria, don't!" Catherine cried, recognizing the danger immediately, but it was too late. Victoria rushed into the stall, attempting to mount Starfire bareback. The horse, already agitated by the gunshots and shouting, reared in panic. His powerful front hooves caught Victoria squarely in the chest, sending her crashing against the back wall of the stall. Richard rushed forward as Starfire bolted out of the open stall, nearly trampling the sheriff in his desperate bid for freedom. Catherine called to the horse, her voice cutting through his panic. Starfire hesitated, ears twitching toward the familiar sound, before allowing her to catch his halter. Inside the stall, Richard knelt beside his sister. Victoria lay crumpled against the wall, the gun fallen from her limp fingers. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. Her breathing labored and shallow. "Get an ambulance!" Richard shouted to the sheriff, who was already on his radio calling for emergency services. Victoria's eyes fluttered open, finding Richard's face hovering above her. "I didn't mean for it to end this way," she gasped. "Save your strength," Richard urged, taking her hand. "Help is coming." Victoria's laugh dissolved into a wet cough. Too late for that. Her gaze drifted past Richard to Catherine, who stood in the stall doorway. "You look so much like your mother." Catherine stepped forward hesitantly, something like pity softening her expression. "I hated that," Victoria whispered. "How much you reminded me of her. How much Richard loved you both." "Victoria, please," Richard began, but she weakly squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry," she breathed, the words barely audible. "Not for everything, but for this, for now." Her eyes closed, her breathing growing more labored with each passing second. Outside, the wail of an approaching ambulance cut through the afternoon air, racing against time to reach Silver Creek Ranch. The emergency room at Silver Creek Memorial Hospital hummed with quiet efficiency. Richard sat in the waiting area, his face drawn with exhaustion. The events of the day had left him emotionally drained. Yet his mind remained alert, processing the magnitude of what had transpired. Catherine returned from the vending machines, offering him a cup of black coffee. "Any news?" she asked, settling into the chair beside him. Richard shook his head. "Still in surgery?" He stared at the swirling black liquid. The doctor didn't sound optimistic. They sat in silence, the weight of Victoria's betrayal and subsequent injury hanging between them. After several minutes, Catherine spoke. "I keep thinking about what she said, that I remind her of my mother." She looked at Richard with questioning eyes. "What was she like?" A small smile softened Richard's weary features. "Maria was extraordinary, brilliant, kind, stubborn as hell when she believed in something." He took a sip of coffee. "She was a botanist, specialized in drought-resistant native plants. That's how we met. She came to consult on sustainable grazing practices for the ranch." "Did she love it there? The ranch, I mean?" "God, yes, more than I did sometimes." Richard's smile widened with the memory. "She transformed the gardens, created this incredible greenhouse. You used to help her, following her around with a little watering can that was almost as big as you were." Catherine's expression turned wistful. "I wish I could remember her." "You have her eyes," Richard said softly. "Her laugh, too, and her way with living things. That gift you have with horses. That's pure Maria." The conversation lapsed into comfortable silence. Catherine closed her eyes, leaning her head against the wall. The day's adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her exhausted and aching from her still healing injuries. "You should get some rest," Richard suggested. "I can call you if there's any news." Catherine shook her head stubbornly. "I'm staying." Despite her determination, she eventually dozed off, her breathing growing deep and even. Richard watched her sleep, marveling at the twist of fate that had brought his daughter back to him after 18 long years. A doctor in surgical scrubs approached, his expression grave. Richard gently touched Catherine's shoulder to wake her before standing to meet the doctor. "Mr. Hale," the surgeon began, his voice low. "Your sister suffered significant trauma to her chest cavity. Multiple rib fractures, a punctured lung, and internal bleeding. We've done everything we can, but, Richard prompted, though he already knew what was coming. "She's not going to make it, I'm sorry." The doctor's professional demeanor softened slightly. "She's conscious now, asking for you. If you want to say goodbye, this would be the time." Richard nodded, his throat tight. Despite everything Victoria had done, she was still his sister, the little girl who had followed him around the ranch, who had held his hand at their parents' funerals, who had stayed when everyone else had gone. "I'll go with you," Catherine said, fully awake now and standing at his side. They followed the doctor through sterile corridors to the ICU. Victoria lay connected to multiple machines, her skin ashen against the white hospital sheets. Her eyes, those sharp blue Hale eyes that had always seen too much, found them as they entered. "Richard," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping monitors. He moved to her bedside, taking her hand gently. "I'm here, Vicky." The childhood nickname slipped out unbidden. A ghost of a smile touched Victoria's lips at the name. "Haven't heard that in years. Save your strength," Richard advised, though they both knew it was futile. Victoria's gaze shifted to Catherine, who stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed. "Come, closer," she managed. Catherine hesitated, then stepped forward, stopping beside Richard. "I want to explain," Victoria said, each word a visible effort. "Not explain. You don't need to," Richard began. "I do." Victoria's fingers tightened weakly around his. "After Maria died, you were lost. The ranch was failing. You couldn't function." Each sentence was punctuated by labored breaths. "I tried to help, but you only wanted Sophia." Richard felt a fresh wave of grief at the memory of those dark days after Maria's death, when his daughter had been his only anchor to the world. "I convinced myself, taking her away, would force you to move on, to save the ranch." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I never wanted her hurt," told Carver. "Find her a good home. Far away." "But he crashed the car," Catherine said quietly. Victoria nodded weakly. "When I heard about the accident, I thought you were both dead, Carver and the girl." "Why didn't you tell anyone once you knew I was alive?" Catherine asked, her voice tight with emotion. "Too late," Victoria whispered. "Richard was finally functioning. Ranch was recovering, and She paused, a tear sliding down her pale cheek. "I was afraid." The monitors beeped more rapidly as Victoria's condition deteriorated. The nurse moved forward, checking her vitals with concern. "In my desk," Victoria gasped, looking at Richard with sudden urgency. "Secret compartment, bottom drawer, everything. There, the truth." "Vicky," Richard started, but she cut him off. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice fading. "Not enough, but true." Victoria's eyes drifted closed, her breathing becoming more labored. The nurse stepped forward. "I think you should step out now. We need to..." The steady beeping of the heart monitor suddenly changed to a continuous tone. The room erupted into controlled chaos as medical staff rushed in, beginning resuscitation efforts. Richard and Catherine were ushered into the hallway, where they waited in stunned silence. It took only minutes for the doctor to emerge, his expression confirming what they already knew. Victoria Hale was gone. The drive back to Silver Creek Ranch was silent, both Richard and Catherine lost in their own thoughts. Dawn was breaking as they turned onto the long driveway, the first rays of sunlight illuminating the sprawling property in golden light. "What will happen now?" Catherine asked as the main house came into view. "Legally, there will be an investigation," Richard replied, his voice heavy with fatigue. "Sheriff Larson will want statements from both of us. There might be charges related to the kidnapping, though with Victoria gone." "That's not what I meant," Catherine said softly. Richard glanced at her, understanding. "Now, we try to rebuild, if that's what you want." Catherine stared out at the ranch, her childhood home, though she remembered almost nothing of it. "I don't know what I want. Everything's happened so fast." "You don't have to decide anything right away," Richard assured her. "This is a lot to process." They entered the house, now eerily quiet without Victoria's commanding presence. Richard headed straight for his sister's office, Catherine following behind. The desk she had mentioned was a massive antique of polished mahogany, intimidating in its solidity, much like Victoria herself. Richard knelt beside the bottom drawer, examining it carefully. "Here," he murmured, finding a nearly invisible seam along the bottom panel. With gentle pressure, the false bottom popped free, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, several envelopes, and a small wooden box. Richard removed them carefully, placing them on the desk surface, with trembling hands. He opened the journal first. "It's Victoria's diary," he said, flipping through the pages. "Going back almost 20 years. Catherine picked up one of the envelopes. Inside was a handwritten letter dated just days before her disappearance, from someone named Deke Carver, outlining terms for the job and requesting payment of $25,000. "She kept evidence of her own crime," Catherine said incredulously. "Victoria documented everything," Richard murmured, still scanning the diary. It was both her strength and her weakness. The wooden box held something unexpected, a collection of childhood mementos, a lock of dark hair tied with a pink ribbon, a crayon drawing of a horse, a small silver bracelet with the name Sophia engraved on a delicate heart charm. Catherine lifted the bracelet, something stirring in the depths of her memory. I think this was mine," Richard nodded, his throat tight. "It was a gift from your mother on your 5th birthday. You wore it every day." Catherine slipped the bracelet onto her wrist, the familiar weight triggering a cascade of fragmented images, a woman with kind eyes helping her fasten the clasp, her own small hands proudly displaying the shining heart, the warm feeling of belonging. "I remember," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Not everything, but pieces, flashes." She picked up the crayon drawing next. It depicted a white horse with black spots, crudely drawn but unmistakably Starfire. The memory came suddenly, vivid and complete, sitting at the kitchen table, tongue poking between her teeth in concentration as she carefully colored the drawing for her father's birthday. "I made this for you," Catherine said, her voice breaking. "For your birthday, Mom helped me wrap it in blue paper because it's your favorite color." Richard's eyes widened. "That's right. I kept it in my office until I disappeared," Catherine finished. Her hand moved to her temple, where the fading bruise from her recent fall remained. "The memories? They're coming back. Not all at once, but the doctor said another head injury could sometimes trigger recall in amnesia patients," Richard explained, hope rising in his voice. "The fall by the creek." Catherine closed her eyes, focusing on the fragments as they surfaced. "The greenhouse," she said suddenly. "Mom's greenhouse. It had a little fountain with goldfish. I named them all after colors. Red, blue, yellow, and green," Richard added, smiling through tears. "You insisted one was green, though it was clearly orange." Catherine laughed, the sound bright and startled. "I remember that. I was so stubborn about it." They spent the rest of the morning like that, piecing together Catherine's childhood through the mementos Victoria had secretly kept, and the memories slowly resurfacing. Each recovered moment was a small miracle, a stitch repairing the torn fabric of their shared past. By mid-morning, exhaustion had finally caught up with them. As Richard made coffee in the kitchen, Catherine wandered to the large picture window overlooking the pastures. In the distance, she could see Starfire grazing peacefully, unaware of the role he had played in bringing Sophia Hale home. "It's strange," she said when Richard joined her with 2 steaming mugs. "I'm still Catherine Brooks. Those 18 years happened. That's still who I am." She turned to face him. "But I'm also starting to remember being Sophia." Richard nodded, understanding. "You're both. You always will be." "I think," Catherine said slowly, testing the words, "that maybe that's okay. Maybe I need to be both to become whoever I'm supposed to be now." Outside, the sun climbed higher, bathing Silver Creek Ranch in the promise of a new day. 3 months had passed since the truth about Catherine's identity had come to light. Spring had given way to summer, bathing Silver Creek Ranch in golden sunlight and new beginnings. The investigation into Victoria's actions had concluded quietly, the authorities agreeing that justice, in its own way, had already been served. Catherine stood on the veranda of the main house, watching as ranch hands guided a small herd of horses into the north pasture. Starfire trotted among them, his white coat gleaming in the morning sun. She smiled at the sight, still marveling at how natural it felt to be here. How right. "Penny for your thoughts." Richard appeared beside her, offering a mug of coffee. "Just thinking about how much has changed," Catherine replied. Accepting the drink gratefully. "And how much hasn't?" Richard nodded, understanding. "The ranch goes on, same as it has for generations. There's something comforting in that constancy." In the months following Victoria's death, they had settled into a new rhythm. Catherine had officially reclaimed her birth name legally, though most people around the ranch still called her Catherine out of habit. She didn't mind. It was a bridge between her past and present, a reminder of the journey that had brought her home. "The lawyer called this morning," Richard said after a comfortable silence. "Everything's finalized. The trust, the will, all of it." Catherine nodded, sipping her coffee. Richard had insisted on updating his will immediately, restoring Sophia Catherine Hale as the primary heir to Silver Creek Ranch. She had protested at first, uncomfortable with the speed and magnitude of the changes, but Richard had been adamant. "This was always meant to be yours," he had explained. "I'm just setting things right." Today, however, was about more than legal documents and inheritance. It was a day they had been planning for weeks, a private memorial service for Victoria. Despite everything Victoria had done, Richard couldn't bring himself to deny his sister a proper farewell. The complicated tangle of love, betrayal, and shared history demanded some form of resolution, some acknowledgement of the woman who had been both villain and victim in their story. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Catherine asked, noting the shadows under Richard's eyes. He nodded. "It's time. For all of us." They had chosen a simple ceremony, attended only by a handful of longtime ranch employees who had known Victoria for years. Father Thomas from the local parish had agreed to say a few words, though the traditional funeral service had been private and held weeks earlier. At noon, they gathered beneath the old oak tree that overlooked the eastern pastures, Victoria's favorite spot on the property. A small stone marker had been placed there, bearing only her name and the dates of her birth and death. As Father Thomas spoke about forgiveness and the complexity of human nature, Catherine studied the faces around her. These people had known Victoria far longer than she had experienced both her sharp business acumen and her cutting temper. Their expressions were solemn but not grief-stricken, a respectful acknowledgement rather than deep mourning. Richard stood beside her, his face a careful mask. Catherine knew the inner conflict he struggled with daily, anger at Victoria's betrayal warring with memories of the sister he had grown up with, loved and trusted. When the priest finished, Richard stepped forward. "Victoria Hale was complicated," he began, his voice steady. "She made choices I will never fully understand or condone, but she also kept this ranch alive during my darkest days, built it into something stronger than it had ever been." He paused, looking out over the land that had been in their family for generations. "For that, at least, I am grateful." After the brief ceremony, the small gathering dispersed, leaving Catherine and Richard alone beneath the oak. They stood in silence for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "I've been thinking," Catherine said finally, "about the greenhouse." Richard looked at her questioningly. More of Catherine's childhood memories had returned over the past months. Though many gaps remained, the greenhouse, Maria's passion project, had featured prominently in those recollections. "I'd like to restore it," Catherine continued. "It's been abandoned since Mom died, right?" Richard nodded, surprised. "Victoria wanted to tear it down years ago, said it was taking up valuable space. I couldn't bring myself to do it, but I couldn't face going inside either. I remember so much of it," Catherine said, her voice soft with wonder. "The smell of damp earth, the way the light filtered through the glass. Mom teaching me the names of all the plants." She smiled at Richard. "It should be alive again." Something lightened in Richard's expression. She would have loved that. As they walked back toward the main house, Catherine's thoughts turned to the future. She had taken a leave of absence from her horse training work, unsure if she would return to it. Silver Creek offered new possibilities. The ranch needed someone with her expertise, and working with the horses gave her a sense of purpose and belonging. Inside, they found Jack Morrow waiting in the study. The private investigator had become a friend during the tumultuous aftermath of Victoria's death, helping to navigate the complex legal issues that arose. "Everything go okay?" he asked, rising from his chair as they entered. Richard nodded. "As well as could be expected. Jack handed him a manila envelope. Final report, as requested. All the loose ends tied up. Thank you for everything, Jack, Richard said, taking the envelope. I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you. The investigator shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Just doing my job. He turned to Catherine with a slight smile. Though I have to say, this was one of the more satisfying cases of my career. Not often I get to reunite a family after 18 years. After Jack departed, Richard opened the envelope. Inside was a comprehensive report detailing everything the investigator had uncovered about the circumstances of Sophia's abduction and subsequent life as Catherine Brooks. You don't have to read this now, Richard said, offering the file to Catherine. Or ever, if you don't want to. Catherine took the report, weighing it in her hands. I need to know my own story, she said simply. All of it. Later that afternoon, Catherine made her way to the old stables. The building had been partially renovated since Victoria's accident. The stall where she had been injured completely rebuilt. Starfire had been moved temporarily to the newer facilities during construction, but had recently returned to his original home. The horse greeted her with a soft nickering sound, pushing his nose against her outstretched palm. Catherine smiled, stroking his neck gently. We've both come full circle, haven't we, boy? She murmured, gathering Starfire's riding gear. Catherine led him out to the paddock. Though her ankle had healed weeks ago, this would be her first real ride since the accident by the creek. She mounted smoothly, feeling the familiar connection with the horse beneath her. They started slowly, walking the perimeter of the paddock. Catherine hummed softly, the lullaby that had first connected them, that had been the first thread pulling her lost memories to the surface. Starfire's ears flicked back, listening to the melody he had known since he was a young colt. Gradually, they increased their pace, trotting, then cantering around the enclosure, the rhythm of hoofbeats on packed earth, the feel of the horse moving beneath her. These sensations had been constants through both her lives. Bridges spanning the 18-year chasm between Sophia and Catherine, Richard watched from the fence, his heart full at the sight of his daughter riding the horse that had waited so faithfully for her return. When Catherine guided Starfire toward the gate, he opened it without a word. Want to join me? Catherine asked, her eyes bright with excitement. There's a trail around the east pasture that I think I remember. Richard hesitated only briefly before nodding. Give me 10 minutes to saddle up. Soon they were riding side by side, father and daughter, along a trail that wound through silver-green sage and stands of aspen. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the landscape, painting the hills in shades of amber and gold. It's strange, Catherine said as they rode. For so long, I felt like something was missing, like I was searching for something I couldn't name. She looked out across the ranch. Her home, both lost and found. Now I know what it was. Richard glanced at her, understanding in his eyes. And now, Catherine smiled, the expression transforming her serious face into something bright and hopeful. Now I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. They continued riding as the sun began its descent toward the western hills. Starfire moved confidently beneath Catherine, his stride matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Behind them, the main house of Silver Creek Ranch stood solid against the horizon, its windows catching the golden light, a beacon guiding them home. As dusk settled over the land, they turned their horses back toward the stables. The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky, eternal witnesses to the cycles of loss and recovery, departure and return. Thank you, Catherine said softly as they approached the warm lights of home. For what? Richard asked. For never giving up. She reached across the space between them, briefly touching his hand. For keeping a place for me, even when you thought I was gone forever. Richard's throat tightened with emotion. There was always a place for you here, he said. There always will be. They dismounted in the stable yard, the familiar routine of caring for the horses bringing a comfortable closure to the day. As they worked side by side, brushing down their mounts and refreshing water buckets, the past and present seemed to merge. Two timelines finally reconciled. Later, they sat on the veranda, watching nightfall completely over Silver Creek Ranch. The land stretched out before them, a legacy preserved through generations of Hales, now secured for the future. So, Richard said, breaking a comfortable silence, what happens next? Catherine considered the question, feeling the weight and promise of possibility. "We live," she said simply. "We remember what was lost. We cherish what was found. And we build something new from both." In the distance, a coyote called to the rising moon, its lonely voice echoing across the valley. Starfire answered with a soft whinny from the stables, a conversation as old as the land itself. Catherine smiled, recognizing her place in this timeless dialogue between the wild and the tamed, the lost and the found, the broken and the healed. After 18 years adrift, Sophia Catherine Hale had finally come home.